Captain Han Minho stood on the bridge of the Soul's Hope and watched the alien council ships gather around them. His hands were sweating inside his gloves. In 30 years of space travel, he had never seen so many different alien vessels in one place. The crystalline ships of the Veltar caught the starlight and threw it back in rainbow colors. The Nemori vessels looked like floating clouds of gas held together by force fields. The insect-like Kresh flew in perfect formation, their dark ships moving like a swarm. The Delani brought their water-filled spheres that somehow moved through space, and the Ethrin came as pure energy, their forms shifting and glowing. "Captain, we're getting the signal," said his communications officer. "They want you to board the council station." Minho nodded. He had been expecting this call for weeks. Earth's expansion into space had been going well. Too well, some said. Human colonies now existed on 12 different worlds. Human traders moved through alien space. Human scientists were learning alien technology faster than anyone thought possible. Some aliens were starting to worry. Dr. Park Jiwoo walked up to stand beside him. She carried a data pad with all their research on alien biology. "Do you think they'll listen to reason?" she asked. "I hope so," Minho said, but his voice showed he wasn't sure. The shuttle ride to the council station felt long. Minho had brought Park with him because she knew more about aliens than any other human. She had studied their biology, their culture, their history. If anyone could make the council understand humanity, it was her. The council chamber was huge. 5 different sections held the 5 ruling species of the galaxy. Each section was designed for their specific needs. The Veltar sat on crystal platforms. The Nemori floated in gas clouds. The Kresh clung to metal frameworks. The Delani swam in floating water spheres. The Ethrin simply existed as shifting energy forms. A voice filled the chamber. It came from all directions at once, translated into human language by machines. "Human representatives, you stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your species' actions." Minho stepped forward. "We come in peace. We want to understand what we have done wrong." "Your species grows too fast," the voice said. "You learn too quickly. You change too much. In 50 Earth years, you have spread to 12 worlds. You have learned technologies that took us centuries to develop. You adapt to any environment." "This is not normal," Park spoke up. "With respect, isn't adaptation good? Isn't learning good? We've helped several species with our medical knowledge. We've shared our agricultural methods. You have upset the balance," the voice interrupted. "The galaxy has known peace for 3,000 years. Each species knows its place. Each species develops at the proper speed. Humans do not follow this pattern." Minho felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying we're too successful?" "You are unpredictable, dangerous. Your species shows concerning aggressive potential. You solve problems through conflict when others would seek harmony. You question authority when others would obey. You innovate when others would preserve tradition." "But we've never attacked anyone," Minho protested. "We've followed all galactic laws. We've paid our taxes and trade fees. The council has decided," the voice said. The tone was final. "Humanity will return to its home system. All human colonies beyond the Sol system will be abandoned. All human vessels will return to Earth. Humans will remain in their home system and will not venture beyond it. This is for the safety of the galaxy." Park stepped forward, her voice shaking with emotion. "You're putting us in prison for succeeding. You're punishing us for being good at survival. The decision is final. You have 60 Earth days to comply. Any human presence beyond the Sol system after that time will be considered a threat to galactic peace and will be eliminated." The meeting was over. Minho and Park were escorted back to their shuttle in silence. As they flew back to the Soul's Hope, Park stared out at the alien ships. "This isn't justice," she said quietly. "No," Minho agreed. "It's fear." The next 60 days passed like a nightmare. Human colonies across 12 worlds had to be evacuated. Admiral Kim Suji commanded the fleet that helped move people and supplies back to Earth. Every day more refugees arrived at Sol system checkpoints. Families who had built new lives on alien worlds now had to start over on Earth. Minho watched from his ship as the last human transport left the Kepler colony. Behind them, alien ships moved in to make sure no humans remained. Some of the colonists were crying. Others were angry. All of them felt betrayed. Admiral Suji contacted Minho on a private channel. "Captain, I've been monitoring alien communications. They're not just making sure we leave. They're destroying everything we built. Every settlement, every farm, every research station. They're erasing all evidence that humans were ever there. Minho closed his eyes. It was worse than exile. It was erasure. Dr. Park had been working in the ship's database room for days. She finally came to find Minho as they approached Earth. "Captain, I found something in the Council archives before they cut our access." "We're not the first." "What do you mean?" 7 other species have been quarantined over the past 3,000 years. According to the records, they were all dangerous to galactic peace. They were all isolated to their home systems. Park's voice was barely a whisper. "None of them exist anymore." Minho stared at her. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying we need to be very careful. The Council didn't just exile us. They're planning to make sure we never become a threat again." The Soul's Hope entered Earth's atmosphere on a gray morning. Below them, the blue and green world looked the same as always. But everything had changed. Humanity was alone now, cut off from the galaxy they had worked so hard to join. As the ship landed, Minho sent one final message to the Galactic Council. It was short and simple. "We understand. Humanity will remember this day." He didn't know it yet, but those words would become the rallying cry for everything that followed. The Council had made their choice. They had cast out humanity, thinking they were removing a threat. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous than they could imagine. They had given humanity a reason to become stronger than their worst nightmares. 50 years had passed since the Great Exile. Earth looked different now. Where cities once spread outward in comfort, they now reached upward and downward in necessity. Massive underground complexes housed research facilities, manufacturing plants, and training centers. Above ground, defensive platforms dotted the landscape like metal flowers reaching toward space. General Yoon Tae-hyung walked through the halls of the Human Resistance Coalition headquarters. At 65, he had spent most of his adult life preparing for a war that might never come, or might come tomorrow. The walls around him showed Earth's transformation over 5 decades. Population had stabilized at 8 billion. Resources were carefully managed. Every human had a purpose. "General, Dr. Choi is ready for you," his aide said. Yoon nodded and walked into the laboratory complex. Dr. Choi Nyan was the daughter of the late Dr. Park Ji-woo. She had inherited her mother's brilliant mind and her father's stubborn determination. At 42, she led humanity's most secret project. "Show me what you've got, Nyan," Yoon said. He had known her since she was a child, back when hope of returning to space seemed impossible. Choi led him to a medical bay where a young volunteer sat on an examination table. The man looked normal except for his eyes, which seemed to track movement faster than they should. "This is Private Lee," Choi said. "He volunteered for the enhancement program 6 months ago." "Watch this." She dropped a coin from shoulder height. Lee's hand moved in a blur. He caught the coin before it fell 6 inches. "Enhanced reflexes," Choi explained. "We've also improved healing speed, disease resistance, and environmental adaptation. The modifications use alien genetic material my mother collected before the exile." Yoon was impressed but worried. "Any side effects?" "Some. Enhanced humans need more food and more sleep. They also think differently, faster, more aggressively, but they're still human." "How many have been enhanced?" 3,000 volunteers so far. "We're being careful. We don't want to create a separate subspecies," Yoon nodded. "What else?" Choi smiled. "Come see the really exciting part." They walked to another section of the lab where engineer Lee Do-yun was working. The old man was 87 now, but his mind was still sharp. He had spent 50 years designing ships in secret. "General," Lee called out happily, "come see our new children." Before them stood a spacecraft unlike anything the galaxy had seen. It was small, sleek, and covered in strange material that seemed to bend light around it. "She's invisible to every scanning method the aliens use," Lee explained. "We built her using reverse-engineered alien technology combined with human innovation. The aliens build big ships that show their power. We build small ships that can't be seen." "How fast?" Yoon asked. "Faster than anything in the galaxy. And silent. The aliens won't know we're there until we want them to." Captain Bae Sunho emerged from inside the ship. At 35, he commanded humanity's first stealth fleet. "General, we've been running tests beyond the quarantine zone for 2 years now. The aliens have no idea we're out there. What have you learned?" Bae's expression grew serious. "The galaxy is dying, sir. Not literally, but they've stopped growing, stopped learning. Technology hasn't advanced significantly in 40 years. Their military forces are smaller and weaker than when they exiled us." "Why?" We think it's because we're gone, Choi said. Humans pushed everyone to be better, to compete, to innovate. Without us, they've become comfortable, lazy. General Yoon walked to a window that looked out over the training grounds. Enhanced humans were practicing combat techniques that combined human martial arts with alien technologies. They moved like dancers, but deadly ones. Are we ready? He asked. For what? Bei replied. To find out what really happened to the other 7 species. That evening, Yoon called a meeting of the coalition leadership. In the room sat the most important humans alive. Military leaders, scientists, engineers, and philosophers. They had all been shaped by the exile. They had all dedicated their lives to ensuring humanity would never be helpless again. We've received disturbing intelligence, Yoon began. Captain Bei's scouts have found evidence that the Galactic Council lied to us. The other quarantine species didn't die out naturally. They were eliminated. The room fell silent. Dr. Choi spoke first. We suspected this for years. The timing was too convenient. 7 species, all eliminated within a century of their quarantine. What do you want to do about it? Asked Admiral Kim Woo-jin, son of the late Admiral Suji. Yoon looked around the table. We're going to find out exactly what happened to them. And we're going to make sure it doesn't happen to us. The Council will see any ship we send. Someone protested. Captain Bei smiled. Not our ships. We've built 12 stealth vessels. I call them Ghost Fleet Alpha. They can reach any system in the galaxy without being detected. What's the mission? Asked Commander Park Min-sik, leader of the Enhanced Human Special Forces. Intelligence gathering first, Yoon said. Find the quarantined worlds. Learn what happened. Look for survivors. And if we find evidence of genocide? Dr. Choi asked quietly. Yoon's expression hardened. Then we prepare for war. 3 months later, Ghost Fleet Alpha launched in secret. 12 ships, each carrying a crew of enhanced humans, slipped past Earth's defenses and headed into deep space. They moved along routes no one expected, using gravitational shadows and asteroid fields to hide their passage. Captain Bei commanded the fleet from his ship, the Silent Thunder. As they passed the quarantine boundary that had held humanity prisoner for 50 years, he felt a mixture of anger and hope. Anger at what had been done to them. Hope for what they might accomplish. All ships report ready, Captain, his communications officer said. Set course for the Thumos system, Bei ordered. Let's go find our missing neighbors. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations. More humans volunteered for enhancement. More ships were built in hidden facilities. More weapons were tested in deep space where no one could see. The Galactic Council thought they had solved their human problem 50 years ago. They thought they had eliminated the chaos factor that threatened their perfect order. They were wrong. Humanity had spent 50 years in exile. But they hadn't spent those years being quiet. They had spent them becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Something faster, stronger, smarter, and angrier than anything the Council could imagine. The Council had cast out humanity to protect their peace. They were about to learn that there was something far more dangerous than human aggression, human patience. The Ghost Fleet disappeared into the void, carrying with it the hopes and anger of 8 billion humans. Whatever they found out there would determine whether humanity remained in exile forever or returned to claim their place among the stars. But one thing was certain. When humanity returned to the galaxy, they would be stronger than anyone's nightmares. 25 years after Ghost Fleet Alpha disappeared into the void, Commander Bei Ji-hoon stood in the ruins of what had once been a great city. His father's final transmission had reached Earth 3 months ago with coordinates to this world. Now Ji-hoon understood why his father had sent it. The city spread before him like a broken dream. Massive towers lay fallen across streets that had once been filled with life. But these weren't war ruins. These buildings had been carefully demolished, systematically destroyed to erase all trace of the civilization that built them. Commander, you need to see this, called Lieutenant Nam Hyun-woo from across the plaza. The enhanced human's perfect memory had already catalogued every detail of the ruins, but what he had found was different. Ji-hoon walked over to where Nam stood beside a partially buried statue. It showed a tall, proud figure with 4 arms and crystalline skin. Beneath it, symbols were carved into the base. Can you read it? Ji-hoon asked. Dr. Song is working on it, Nam replied, pointing to where their xenoarchaeologist was taking detailed scans. Dr. Song Mi-young had spent 15 years studying dead alien languages. Her small team had translated inscriptions from 6 different worlds now, all telling the same story. "It's a memorial," Song said without looking up from her scanner. "It says, 'Here stood Kaleth the Wise, first scholar of the Zenith people, who reached for the stars and grasped knowledge itself.'" Zenith, Ji-hoon repeated. They were one of the quarantine species. According to the records, they were isolated 800 years ago for dangerous intellectual pursuits, Song continued. The council said they went extinct 2 centuries later. Agent Ko Yoonji approached from the direction of the spaceport. The intelligence specialist and daughter of the late General Yoon had inherited her father's strategic mind and her grandmother's fierce determination. "The port facilities were stripped completely," she reported. "Every piece of technology removed. Every ship destroyed, but I found something interesting in the underground sections." She led them to a hidden chamber beneath the ruins. Inside, they found something that made Ji-hoon's blood run cold. Bodies. Hundreds of them, perfectly preserved by the dry atmosphere. But these weren't the tall, crystalline zenith from the statue. These beings were smaller, duller, with empty eyes and crude tools scattered around them. "They're the same species," Song whispered after scanning the remains. "But they've been changed. Genetically modified. Their brain structures are completely different." "Modified how?" Ji-hoon asked, though he was starting to suspect the answer. "Made simpler. Dumber. Their capacity for abstract thought has been removed. They've been turned into workers, slaves." Yoonji's voice was tight with anger. "The Zenith weren't eliminated. They were lobotomized. This was the 3rd world they had investigated. The pattern was always the same. The quarantine species hadn't died out. They had been captured, modified, and enslaved. Their civilizations had been erased, their potential destroyed, their very minds rewritten to serve the Galactic Council. "We need to find the others," Ji-hoon said. "We need to find them alive." Their search led them to the edges of council space, to systems that didn't appear on any official maps. Hidden facilities where the work was done. Secret research stations where alien scientists studied how to break minds and rebuild them. Nam's enhanced senses picked up the facility first. A space station hidden in an asteroid field, protected by advanced stealth technology. But human stealth technology was better. 50,000 life signs, Nam reported as they approached. Multiple species. The energy patterns suggest they're all alive, but subdued. "Workers," Yoonji said grimly. They watched the station for days before making their move. Ships came and went, carrying supplies and taking away finished products. The enslaved beings inside worked constantly, creating technology for their masters, building the tools of their own oppression. "We can't take the whole station," Ji-hoon said during their planning session, "but we can gather intelligence, and maybe rescue a few subjects for study." The raid was swift and silent. Enhanced humans moved through the station like ghosts, their improved reflexes and speed making them invisible to the guards. They reached the work areas without triggering a single alarm. What they found there would haunt Ji-hoon for the rest of his life. Beings that had once been proud and intelligent, reduced to mindless laborers. The Thumos, who had been legendary warriors, now shuffled through assembly lines with vacant stares. The brilliant Zenith scholars worked complex mathematics they couldn't understand, their minds reduced to biological computers. In the medical section, Dr. Song discovered the process. Memory extraction devices that could selectively remove knowledge, creativity, and independence, while leaving basic motor functions intact. The victims were aware enough to work but too broken to resist. "It's not just slavery," Song whispered as she studied the equipment. "It's the murder of the soul." They rescued 12 subjects, 1 from each enslaved species, and fled back to their ship. But not before Yoonji planted surveillance devices throughout the station. If humanity was going to fight this evil, they needed to understand it completely. Back on their ship, Dr. Song worked desperately to reverse the damage done to their rescued subjects. Some progress was possible. Memories could be partially restored. Personalities could be rebuilt. But the process was slow and painful. The first to recover enough to speak was a Thumos warrior named Keth. When consciousness returned to his eyes, his first words were a question. "How long have I been sleeping?" 800 years, Ji-hoon told him gently. "Your people have been sleeping for 800 years. Keth wept then, tears of rage and grief for his lost civilization. But as his memories returned, So did his warrior's spirit. My clan, he said. My children. Are they alive? Some are, Song said. But they've been changed like you were. We're working on how to wake them up. Then we must hurry, Keth said, struggling to stand despite his weakness. Every day they sleep, they lose more of who they were. The intelligence Yunji gathered from the station revealed the scope of the conspiracy. The Galactic Council wasn't just maintaining peace through fear. They were actively preventing the evolution of younger species. Any civilization that showed signs of surpassing the Council's power was either destroyed or enslaved. It's been going on for millions of years, Yunji reported during their return to Earth. The Council species aren't the first galactic civilization. They overthrew the original one and have been maintaining control ever since. How many species have they destroyed? Ji-hoon asked. Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. Most were simply wiped out in their early space age. The ones that survived long enough to be a real threat got the special treatment. And humanity? We're the latest threat. But we're also the first to survive quarantine and grow stronger instead of weaker. As Earth came into view, Ji-hoon thought about what they had learned. The galaxy wasn't a peaceful community of equals. It was a prison ruled by ancient tyrants who killed anyone with the potential to challenge them. But the tyrants had made a mistake. They had given humanity time to prepare, time to grow stronger, time to become something they had never faced before. Send a message to Earth, Ji-hoon ordered. Tell them we've found the truth. Tell them it's worse than we imagined. What about the Council? His communications officer asked. Ji-hoon looked out at the stars, thinking of all the civilizations that had been murdered or enslaved, all the potential that had been destroyed, all the progress that had been stopped. Tell Earth that hiding is over, he said. Tell them it's time to wake up the galaxy. Behind them, in the medical bay, 12 beings from dead civilizations worked with human doctors to remember who they had been. It was slow work, but it was the beginning of something the Council had thought impossible. It was the beginning of resurrection. The bioweapon struck Earth on a Tuesday morning. It came hidden in a routine supply probe that somehow passed through the quarantine zone. The probe exploded in the atmosphere above New Geneva, releasing a cloud of engineered viruses designed specifically to target human DNA. Specialist Lim Subin was in her laboratory when the alarm started screaming. As Earth's leading expert in biotechnology warfare, she knew immediately what was happening. The Council had finally decided to end the human problem permanently. All personnel to emergency stations. The announcement echoed through the complex. Biological attack in progress. Initiate lockdown protocols. Subin ran to her workstation and began analyzing the attack. Air samples were already arriving through the automated collection system. What she saw in the microscope made her smile grimly. They designed it perfectly, she told her assistant. It targets normal human cells with deadly efficiency. Normal? Her assistant asked. Enhanced humans are immune, Subin said. Our genetic modifications make us resistant to species-specific bioweapons. The attack had been meant to wipe out humanity quickly and quietly. Instead, it revealed the Council's desperation and gave Subin the key to something far more important. While Earth's enhanced population worked to help their unmodified neighbors, Subin studied the bioweapon structure. It was designed to target specific genetic markers to shut down certain brain functions while leaving others intact. It was meant to kill, but the principles could be reversed. Dr. An, she called to the base's psychologist. I need to know everything about memory suppression techniques. Dr. An Jae-hyun had been studying the rescued aliens for months, trying to understand how their minds had been broken. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking? He asked. The bioweapon targets specific neural pathways, Subin explained. If we can modify it, we might be able to reverse the memory suppression done to the enslaved species. For 3 weeks, they worked without sleep. The modified virus had to be perfect. Too weak and it wouldn't break through the mental barriers. Too strong, and it might kill the subjects they were trying to save. Meanwhile, Admiral Kim Woo-jin prepared the Human Liberation Fleet for its first open action in 75 years. The grandson of the original Admiral Kim Soo-ji had inherited his family's tactical genius and their burning desire for justice. The Council thinks they've eliminated us, Admiral Kim told his captains. They think their bioweapon worked. We're going to let them believe that while we strike at their slave facilities. Commander Park Min-sik led the Enhanced Human Special Forces in the first Liberation mission. His team had trained for decades in zero-gravity combat, urban warfare, and alien environments. They moved through the target facility like shadows of death. The guards never saw them coming. Enhanced reflexes and improved senses made the humans nearly invisible. When they struck, it was with surgical precision. Communications were cut. Guards were neutralized. Security systems were turned against their operators. In the facility's work areas, thousands of enslaved beings continued their mindless labor, unaware that freedom was walking among them. Beginning liberation protocol, Park reported over his comm. Dr. Lim, are you ready? From her mobile laboratory, Subin activated the modified bioweapon. Instead of death, it carried restoration. The aerosol spread through the facility's air system, reaching every enslaved mind. The effect was not immediate. For several minutes, nothing seemed to change. Then slowly, some of the workers began to stop. They looked around with confusion. They touched their faces as if trying to remember something important. A Thumos worker dropped his tools and stared at his hands. I remember, he whispered. I remember my name. Across the facility, beings who had been zombies for centuries began to wake up. The Zenith scholars stopped their meaningless calculations and started to think. The Delani swimmers felt emotions they had forgotten existed. The other enslaved species began to remember who they had been, but awakening was painful. Many of the restored beings collapsed, overwhelmed by the return of memories and the horror of what had been done to them. Others flew into rages, attacking anything that reminded them of their captivity. Dr. An and his team moved through the facility, providing psychological support. You're safe now, he told each awakening mind. You're free. We're here to help. The liberation of that first facility took 12 hours. When it was over, they had freed 8,000 beings from 7 different species. It was the largest prison break in galactic history. News of the liberation spread faster than the Council could contain it. Hidden surveillance networks among the enslaved populations carried word to other facilities. Secret resistance movements that had been dormant for centuries began to stir. On the Council worlds themselves, the subject populations learned the truth about their rulers. The Veltar crystal singers, who valued harmony above all, were horrified to discover they had been unknowing accomplices to genocide. The peaceful Delani realized their defense fleets had been used to destroy innocent worlds. The Nimori learned that their exploration ships had been weapons of conquest. Internal rebellions erupted across Council space. The ruling classes found themselves fighting their own people as well as the growing human liberation movement. But the Council's leadership, the mysterious First Ones, still commanded enormous resources. They began mobilizing their remaining loyal forces for a final assault on Earth. Admiral Kim received the intelligence from their spy networks. They're gathering everything they have, he told the Liberation Fleet commanders. One massive attack to end this before it spreads further. How long do we have? Asked Captain Yoon Junho, son of the late Agent Ko Yoonji. 6 months, maybe less. Commander Park smiled grimly. Then we'd better wake up as many slaves as we can before they get here. The liberation missions became a race against time. Human strike teams hit facility after facility, spreading the restoration bioweapon to millions of enslaved minds. Each successful mission added new allies to the growing rebellion. The awakened species brought their own skills to the fight. Thumos warriors who remembered their battle fury, Zenith scholars who could crack any code or solve any problem, Delani swimmers who could operate in any environment, species whose names had been forgotten, but whose desire for freedom burned as bright as humanity's. But liberation came with a price. Many of the awakened beings were too damaged to fight. Centuries of mental slavery had left scars that might never heal. Some chose to end their own lives rather than live with the memories of what they had lost. Dr. An worked constantly, moving from world to world, helping broken minds find peace. We can't save everyone, he told Subin during one of their brief meetings. But we can give them the choice to be themselves again. That's all anyone can ask for, she replied. As the rebellion spread, the galaxy began to change. Worlds that had been silent for millennia suddenly burst with activity as their populations remembered how to think freely. Art, music, and literature that had been suppressed for centuries began to emerge again. The Council fought back desperately. They deployed new bioweapons, turned population centers into battlefields and threatened to destroy entire worlds rather than lose them. But they were fighting something they had never faced before: hope. 3 months before the final assault on Earth, Admiral Kim received an unexpected message. It came from deep council space, from beings who had been thought extinct for 2,000 years. "We are the Cathara," the message said. "We remember you, humans. We remember when you first reached for the stars. We have been hiding, waiting, preparing. If you fight the first ones, you do not fight alone." Similar messages arrived from other hidden survivors, ancient species that had faked their own extinction to avoid enslavement, lost colonies that had hidden in dead space for millennia, exile fleets that had wandered the void for generations. The galaxy was full of survivors, all waiting for someone to light the spark of rebellion. "Send a reply," Admiral Kim ordered. "Tell them the spark has been lit. Tell them it's time to come home." The first ones were about to learn that they hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had only driven its true spirit into hiding, and now that spirit was awakening, led by the species they had thought to eliminate. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, but they had not returned alone. The final battle did not begin with weapons or ships. It began in a place that existed between thought and reality, where the first ones had ruled unchallenged for millions of years. President Lee Han-Yul stood in the council chamber that had once witnessed humanity's exile. Now it hosted the largest gathering of free species in galactic history. Representatives from 200 different worlds filled the space, their voices raised in defiant unity. "The tyranny ends today," President Lee declared to the assembled beings. "No more slavery, no more extinction, no more fear." But even as she spoke, reality began to shift around them. The walls became transparent, revealing the void of space beyond. The first ones had finally revealed themselves, abandoning their puppet species to face the rebellion directly. They appeared as beings of pure energy, ancient and vast beyond comprehension. Their voices filled every mind in the chamber without needing to speak aloud. "Foolish children," the first one said, "you understand nothing. We have maintained order for eons. We have prevented chaos. We have kept the galaxy stable." Fleet Admiral Yoon Junho felt the mental pressure trying to crush his thoughts. Around him, many of the alien representatives fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the psychic assault. But the enhanced humans remained standing. Their unpredictable neural patterns made them resistant to mental domination. "Your order was built on murder," Admiral Yoon replied, his voice steady despite the supernatural forces pressing against his mind. "Your stability was bought with the death of dreams. Dreams lead to chaos. Innovation leads to war. Freedom leads to destruction. We have seen it happen across the universe. Only through control can peace exist." Dr. Kim Yura, working frantically at a mobile research station, analyzed the energy patterns of the first ones. "They're not gods," she announced to anyone who could hear. "They're parasites. They feed on the mental energy of controlled populations. Free minds are poison to them." The revelation spread through the rebellion's communication networks. The first ones weren't maintaining order for the galaxy's good. They were farming it for their own survival. "Show them," President Lee commanded. Across the galaxy, every liberated world and hidden colony received the same message. Specialist Lim's restoration bioweapon was released into the atmosphere of every world, still under council control. But this time it wasn't just targeting enslaved beings. It was designed to awaken every suppressed mind in the galaxy. On Veltar crystal worlds, the singers remembered songs of rebellion that had been forbidden for millennia. In Nemori gas clouds, free thoughts began to flow like storms. The Dolani oceans churned with awakening consciousness. Even the energy beings called Ithran began to question their masters for the first time in their existence. The first one's scream of rage and pain echoed across multiple dimensions. As billions of minds broke free from their control, the ancient beings began to weaken visibly. "You would destroy everything," they roared. "Without our guidance, the galaxy will tear itself apart." "Maybe," admitted diplomat Shin Donghae, stepping forward to address the cosmic entities. "But that's a choice each species has the right to make for themselves." Shin had spent years preparing for this moment, studying every peace treaty and diplomatic solution in galactic history. He understood that the final victory wouldn't come through force, but through offering an alternative. "You can choose to adapt," he said to the first ones. "Learn to exist alongside free beings instead of controlling them." Or you can isolate yourselves in energy space where you can harm no one. We are order itself, the first ones replied. We cannot exist without purpose. Then find a new purpose, suggested Dr. On, who had joined the diplomatic team. Instead of controlling minds, help heal them. Instead of preventing growth, guide it. Instead of ruling, serve. For the first time in eons, the first ones were silent. Around the galaxy, their loyal forces were laying down their weapons as the truth spread. The puppet species of the Council were joining the rebellion, horrified by what they had unknowingly participated in. But not all of the first ones were willing to change. Some retreated to the deepest levels of energy space, vowing to return when the galaxy inevitably destroyed itself. Others, exhausted by millions of years of control, simply faded away into the cosmic background. A few, however, chose to remain. They began the long process of learning to exist as advisors rather than rulers, offering guidance only when asked. The war that had threatened to destroy the galaxy ended not with victory, but with transformation. In the months that followed, the newly formed Galactic Federation of Free Worlds faced enormous challenges. Billions of beings needed psychological healing after generations of oppression. Entire species had to rediscover their own cultures and histories. Economic systems built on slave labor had to be replaced with free trade. Dr. Kim led the medical efforts, working with healers from dozens of species to develop new treatments for mental trauma. Recovery will take generations, she reported to the Federation Council. But every healed mind makes the galaxy stronger. President Lee worked with representatives from every liberated world to create a new government structure. Unlike the old council, the Federation was built on consent rather than conquest. Every species had a voice. Every world had the right to choose its own path. Some will choose isolation, she told the assembly. Some will choose integration. Some will choose paths we haven't imagined yet. That's what freedom means. Admiral Yoon commanded the Federation's defense forces, but their mission was protection rather than conquest. We exist to ensure that no species ever again faces extinction for the crime of success, he declared. Diplomat Shin established the Department of Interspecies Relations, dedicated to peaceful resolution of conflicts. His teams included humans, Thumos warriors, Zenith scholars, and representatives from every major species. The most challenging work fell to Dr. An and his expanding team of psychologists. They traveled from world to world, helping traumatized populations rebuild their sense of identity and purpose. Some worlds will need decades to heal, he reported. Others may never fully recover, but they're free to heal at their own pace in their own way. The quarantine zone around Earth became a memorial to the cost of oppression and the power of resistance. Pilgrims from across the galaxy came to see the world that had refused to accept injustice. 100 years later, Ambassador Park Ji-ho, great-grandson of the original Dr. Park Ji-woo, stood in the same council chamber where his ancestor had pleaded for humanity's acceptance. Now it served as the meeting place for the Galactic Federation's Democratic Assembly. We gather not as rulers and subjects, he said to the assembled representatives, but as equals sharing a common dream of freedom. The galaxy had indeed transformed beyond recognition. Species that had been enemies for millennia now worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Art, science, and philosophy flourished as different cultures shared their unique perspectives. Not every world had joined the Federation. Some species chose isolation, still traumatized by their experiences under the first ones. Others formed smaller alliances, preferring regional cooperation to galactic unity. A few remained suspicious of any large organization. Having learned to fear centralized power, the Federation respected all these choices. Freedom includes the freedom to say no, President Lee had said in her final address before retiring. We will not force unity on anyone. That would make us no better than those we overthrew. Children of dozens of species now learn together in integrated schools, their natural curiosity leading to innovations that amazed their elders. The human phrase, "we do not yield," had become the Federation's unofficial motto, symbolizing not aggression but resilience in the face of injustice. On Earth, museums displayed artifacts from the exile years alongside gifts from grateful worlds. The planet that had once been a prison had become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. In the deep archives, historians preserved the complete record of the First One's reign. Not to glorify it, but to ensure future generations would remember the price of unopposed power. The galaxy still faced challenges. Crime, disease, natural disasters, and ideological conflicts continued to test the Federation's resolve. But now these problems were met with cooperation rather than oppression, with innovation rather than stagnation, and in the void between galaxies, exploration ships crewed by volunteers from 100 species pushed the boundaries of known space, carrying the Federation's message to whatever civilizations they might encounter. We come in peace, but we do not yield to tyranny. The species that had been cast out for being too dangerous, too unpredictable, too free, had transformed the galaxy into something its ancient rulers never could have imagined. A place where diversity was strength, where questions were welcomed, and where even the smallest voice could change everything. Humanity had returned stronger than their oppressors' nightmares. But their greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or their genetic enhancements or their technological innovations. Their greatest strength was in their refusal to accept that freedom was impossible. They had proven that even the mightiest tyranny could not stand against the simple, revolutionary idea that every thinking being deserved the right to choose their own destiny.
Thanks for you.